another installment of the Collector's Planet presents the Collector's Corner. My name is David de la Cruz, and with me today I'll have a longtime friend, Andy Purvis. He's a local radio personality and sports enthusiast, and he's also a part-time author, and we'll touch on all those subjects today. Andy, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
He's also a great storyteller, folks, and I'd like to ask you, Andy, if you would please start off with some awesome story that you have for the viewing public here.
Well, you know, I've explained to you over the years, Dave, that one of the reasons I write is not only have I had a chance to meet a lot of my heroes and your heroes growing up, but it's the stories that connect us all together. And a lot of times you keep people alive after they pass by continuing to tell their stories. And of course, you're wearing a Mickey Mantle jersey today, so I'll tell you one of my favorite Mickey Mantle stories. And of course, Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin were notorious for playing pranks, and Martin was really the key to that, but he played more pranks than anybody else. Martin being from Berkeley, California, he was a big city kid. Mickey from Commerce, Oklahoma, small town, mining town kid. But Billy had never been hunting before, deer hunting. So Mickey convinces him that he's going to take him down to San Antonio to a friend's ranch, and they're going to go deer hunting. So Billy's all excited, and they drive down. They fly in, they rent a car, they drive out to the ranch, and Mickey says to Billy, "Wait in the car a minute. I'm going to go tell our friend we're here." So he goes up to the house, knocks on the door. His friend comes to the door, and he said, "We're going to hunt." And the guy says, "Hey, have a blast, but I got a favor I want you to ask of you." He says, "I have an old mule out in the barn that's old and needs to be put down." He said, "Would you mind putting my mule down, and I'll just call the vet, have him come out and remove the remains?" Mickey said, "Sure, I'll be glad to do that." So on the way back to the car, Mickey's thinking, here's my chance to pull a prank on Martin. So Mickey puts this mad look on his face, stomps back to the car. Martin's watching from the front seat. Mickey opens up the trunk, takes out his shotgun, walks into the barn, boom, shoots the mule. The mule goes down. As soon as the mule goes down, behind him he hears boom, boom, boom. He turns around. Martin's got his gun out of the car. He's shooting the man's chickens, his dogs, his cattle.
Ooh, that is awesome. Oh my goodness.
So the Martin ended up playing the trick instead of Mantle anyway.
That is awesome. What a great segue into the history of baseball and the behind the scenes that some of you have never heard stories like this before. And Andy is just, as I said before, he's a great author and he's an awesome storyteller. All of this are true facts. Look it up for yourself, folks. We're talking about the Yankees and how they were in San Antonio. There was an article in San Antonio newspaper. Could you tell us more about this article?
Yeah, I ran across this article in the San Antonio newspaper. I had heard about it actually from a friend of mine who lives in San Antonio. And so I called the San Antonio Express. And they put me onto this little lady down in the darkest recesses of the building. She was a real sweetheart. I don't remember her name. And I said, "Is there any way you could go back through the files and find out if the Yankees actually played spring training in San Antonio?" So long story short, she sends me a copy of the article, and I understand you can't see it, but it leads off, "Roos home run features Yanks victory over Dodgers." So not only is the Brooklyn Dodgers there, but the New York Yankees. It's 1922. Okay, so further investigating, in the article it talks about a photo that was printed by a photograph company in San Antonio. So I contacted them. Turns out 1922 they didn't have negatives like you and I take pictures today.
Interesting.
It's on a glass negative, and the glass negative is in their safe. So I won't tell you what I paid for it. But they were able to get into the safe, get this glass negative out, and create this photo again. And I have a copy of that photo. And it's not an original, it's a copy, but there's very, very few people have seen it. And I don't know how many people know that the Yankees and the Dodgers actually had a spring training game in San Antonio, Texas. But you'll notice in the crowd, everybody's dressed up to the nines. Top hats, ties, coats. And there's something else unusual about this picture. The manager is at the beginning of the photo and at the end of the photo. So I asked the people at the company who created the photo, how did that happen? He said, well, it was shot by panoramic. Now, Rene would know what I'm talking about, which means you focus the camera and then you move the camera slowly to take this line of this entire team. Well, as he's taking the picture, the manager runs around behind the guy taking the photo and gets on the end of the line and he's waving. So he's actually in the photo twice.
That's awesome. Along with this photo, I see a very unusual looking glove over there.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
Well, I got to tell you some of the recent history about this glove, and then I'll tell you the history of the glove itself. Alex Bregman, new third baseman for the Houston Astros, of course, played here for our Corpus Christi Hooks. I saw Alex play like twice, and I said, this guy's going straight to Houston. So I arranged I cover the Hooks on our radio show, Sports Radio Corpus Christi, and I set up an interview, and I took this glove with me. Now the reason is, Alex was an All-American at LSU. So was Alvin Dark, okay? And so I took this glove, and I'm talking to Bregman. We're talking about LSU and everything, and I said, you know the name of the drive that runs beside the stadium there at LSU? He goes, yeah, it's the Alvin Dark Drive. I said, do you know anything about Alvin Dark? Well, I think he played baseball. Yeah.
Okay.
1948, Alvin Dark was an All-American at LSU. He played football and baseball. He got signed by the Boston Braves. This is before they moved to Milwaukee. And then in 1950, he joined the New York Giants. This is a glove that Alvin Dark wore. It's got his name printed on the inside in 1950s for the New York Giants.
Wow.
And of course, in 1951, a guy by the name of Willie Mays made the great,
Catch.
join, and 54 was the catch, but 51, Mays joins the team, and of course they go to the World Series. But
Oh, wow.
I was going to bring a Nolan Ryan glove to kind of show you the difference, because the gloves today are like 9-10 inches long. This thing just goes right on your hand. The ball goes right in the middle.
My goodness.
Alvin Dark, 1948 Rookie of the Year. He also, I believe, won the first Gold Glove.
I mean, I'm looking at this glove. I have it in my hand. This is an amazing piece of history, folks. And if you look at the size, it's small. There's probably more than half of the major leaguers today have hands that are bigger than this glove.
Yeah. And what was interesting is, until 1957, the players left the gloves on the field. If you go back and look at the old footage, you'll see them. They'll make a play. They'll throw to first, and what does he do? He takes his glove and slings it out into the outfield.
What can you tell us about that very interesting photo?
Well, Sibby Sisti played the manager of the Pittsburgh team that played against Roy Hobbs and the New York Knights in the movie in the championship game, the one where he hits the ball and knocks out the
Right.
And very few people knew who Sibby Sisti was. Great ball player, not a Hall of Famer, but he kind of lived a relatively unknown in Mississippi at the time, I believe, was where. And I found an address for him, sent him this photograph, and of course he signed it. Best wishes to Andy, Roy Hobbs, the natural, Sibby Sisti. And of course, like you do anything that's rare or valuable, you send it in to PSA Sports, Professional Sports Authenticators, and they sent me back a letter of authenticity that it is his signature.
That is awesome.
And I actually have 2 or 3 items signed, but this was kind of the neatest one with Redford in it.
Yeah, this is awesome.
The one thing I remember about that movie is Wilford Brimley played the manager. And of course, remember in the movie, he wouldn't let Roy take batting practice because he thought Roy was too old, and he thought their scouts were playing a trick on him. And he kept saying, tomorrow I'll be here 6 o'clock for batting practice, and Roy says, I have been every day, But there's a scene in the movie after Roy takes batting practice and plays where Wilford Brimley says something to the extent of, I don't know where you're from, kid, but you're the best darn hitter I've ever seen. And I thought that was kind of the one line that kind of tied the movie together.
I see this bat right in front of me, and it has Negro Leagues imprinted on it right here.
This is a forgotten part of our past. I don't think there's very few Negro League players that are even alive today. There's 38 signatures on this bat, and you'll notice that in a lot of my stuff, I have worked at some of this stuff, like you said, for 25, 30 years, some 40 years. There's 4 Hall of Famers on there. Leon Day, Buck Leonard, Monty Irvin, and Ray Danridge. But there's some other names. Buck O'Neill's on here, who was made famous by the Ken Burns PBS series, baseball. You know, it was a 9-inning, originally a 9-inning baseball series.
He did not make the Hall of Fame.
But missed it by 1 vote. Think about that. Nobody's ever been voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame unanimously. How does Ken Griffey Jr. not get? If Derek Jeter and Mo Rivera don't get 100%, there's something wrong. Okay, but anyway, back to the Negro Leagues. Negro Leagues started in the 20s, basically. I don't know exactly what year. By 1947, Jackie had joined the Dodgers. It was just a short, maybe 8 to 10 years after that, that the Negro Leagues kind of disappeared. Now, there was some barnstorming and things like that.
Right.
And there's some terrific names. Ted Double Duty Radcliffe.
I love the nicknames.
Ted Double Duty Radcliffe. He would pitch in the doubleheaders. He'd pitch one game. He would catch the second game. He played with Satchel Paige. Double Duty passed away several years ago. He was living in Chicago. You've got names like Buck O'Neill, like we just talked about. Buck O'Neill, after the Ken Burns series, he became pretty famous. I saw him at the 2004 All-Star game in Houston. They had a Negro League exhibit there, and he was kind of the host. Him and a fellow by the name of Slick Surratt.
Slick Surratt.
These two guys were the influence of opening the Negro League Hall of Fame in Kansas City. Okay, and Buck was on the air with John Miller and Joe Morgan, which I thought was a great team. And they asked him about the great Josh Gibson, the great catcher. The only guy to hit a ball completely out of Yankee Stadium. Not even Mickey Mantle did that, not even Babe Ruth, okay?
Amazing.
And they asked him, how good was Josh Gibson? And I'll never get Buck's answer. Buck's answer was, oh, he was better than that. Which means no matter how good you thought he was, he was better than that. Isn't that a great answer?
That is awesome. Tip of the iceberg with Andy and his stories and all his memorabilia. Thanks again for watching, and hope to catch you next time. Take care.